Martha Washington, 89 years old, had cleaned St. Mary's Hospital for 47 years. But on December 15, 2023, at exactly 6:47 a.m., she asked Dr. Harrison Blake a question that would destroy everything he believed about himself. She stood there in her faded blue uniform, leaning on her mop handle, watching the celebrated neurosurgeon review charts at the nurse's station. The morning light caught the tremble in her weathered hands. But that tremble, it wasn't age, it was something far worse. "Dr. Blake," she said softly, "what does it mean when someone sees shadows that ain't there?" The doctor's laughter echoed through the empty hallway, sharp, cruel, the kind of laughter that cuts. "Perhaps you should stick to mopping, Martha. Leave medicine to those of us who went to Harvard." 3 nurses heard him say it. Within an hour, that laughter would haunt him in ways he couldn't imagine. But Martha didn't move. She pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket, an X-ray from 1976. Her hands shook as she unfolded it, not from fear, from something else entirely, something that would make Dr. Blake question every choice he'd ever made. Even if that someone saved your life once. What Dr. Blake didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that in exactly 47 minutes that X-ray would prove he owed this woman everything. His career, his life, his very ability to walk, and the debt he was about to discover would cost him something no Harvard degree could prepare him for. Hold on. Before I tell you what's on that X-ray, before I reveal why Martha's hands were shaking, I need to know something. Here's what blows my mind. Someone in Australia is listening to this at the exact same time as someone in Ohio. Someone in South Africa is hearing Martha's story while someone in Vancouver is too. This moment, this story about a hospital janitor in Georgia, is connecting people across the entire world. That's the power of Story Buddy, bringing us together through stories that remind us we're not alone. So tell me in the comments right now, where are you? What city? What country? Drop it below. Let's see how far Martha's story is traveling. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell right now. Because what that X-ray reveals, it's going to change how you see every person you've ever overlooked. Dr. Harrison Blake's morning had started perfectly. The email had arrived at 6:15 a.m. "Congratulations, Dr. Blake. The board has voted unanimously to appoint you chief of surgery. Official announcement this afternoon." At 52, he was everything his father said he'd never become. By 7 o'clock a.m., he'd be everything his father was right about. He'd worked for this moment his entire life. Harvard Medical School, Johns Hopkins residency, published in The Lancet, 3 surgical innovations bearing his name. And not once, not in 30 years of medicine, had he ever truly looked at Martha Washington. Martha had been invisible to him for 3 years, just another janitor, another face that blurred into the background of his important life, another them. But Martha had been watching him, every day for 3 years, waiting for the right moment, waiting for today. "I don't have time for games," he snapped, turning away from her at the nurse's station. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the tile she'd mopped an hour earlier. "Your mama said you'd say that," Martha whispered. The clicking stopped. He froze. His mother, Elizabeth Blake, had been dead for 30 years, buried in 1993 after the cancer took her. But what Martha knew about his mother, what she was about to reveal, would prove that some debts outlive the grave. The X-ray fluttered to the floor between them. Even from 6 feet away, even without picking it up, Dr. Blake could see it. The distinctive break in the left femur, the unique fracture pattern, the same break he'd had as a child. The same break that should have left him crippled for life. The one that mysteriously healed after a homeless woman and her husband appeared at the rural Georgia hospital in 1976. The miracle the doctors could never explain. Dr. Blake's hand moved toward the X-ray, but before his fingers touched it, Martha said 3 words that made his blood run cold. "I got receipts." Because what Martha was about to show him wasn't just about his leg. It was about who really saved his life, who really made his career possible, and what he'd done 3 years ago without knowing to destroy the family that had given him everything. Flashback, July 17, 1976. Mercy General Hospital, rural Georgia. Temperature, 94 degrees. Chance of survival, 12%. 7-year-old Harrison Blake was dying. The doctors had given him 3 hours. He'd make it 4, just barely. The car accident had shattered his left leg in 14 places, punctured his right lung, fractured his skull. His father, drunk behind the wheel, had walked away without a scratch. His father always walked away without a scratch. That was the problem. The rural Georgia hospital had no specialists, no pediatric surgeon, no orthopedic team, just one exhausted doctor and a prayer. Elizabeth Blake sat beside her son's bed, holding his small hand. She'd been there for 9 hours. She'd be there for 48 more. At hour 11, a young black woman in a janitor's uniform approached. Elizabeth almost sent her away. Almost. That almost would change everything. The woman was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and calloused hands. Her name tag read, Martha, Environmental Services. "Your boy needs blood," Martha said softly. "Rare type, AB negative with Kell antigen." Exactly what the doctor had said 2 hours earlier. Exactly what wasn't available within 200 miles. "They said there's none available," Elizabeth sobbed. "They said." "I know what they said." Martha rolled up her sleeve. "I got what he needs." What Martha didn't say, what she couldn't say, was how she knew Harrison's exact blood type, how she knew about the Kell antigen, how she knew the doctors were wrong about his chances. Because Martha's husband Marcus had been reading the boy's charts for 6 hours. Charts he wasn't supposed to see. Charts he understood better than anyone in that hospital. What happened next was medical fraud. Beautiful, necessary fraud. Martha's blood saved Harrison. 2 pints, drawn in secret by a sympathetic nurse who looked the other way. But blood wasn't enough. The leg was shattered beyond repair. The doctors had already scheduled the amputation for morning. That night, while the hospital slept, Marcus Washington entered the boy's room. Dr. Marcus Washington, brilliant surgeon in Haiti, trained in Paris, published in international journals. In America, just a janitor's husband whose medical degree meant nothing. He brought supplies in a maintenance cart, sterile tools hidden under dirty rags, X-rays he'd studied for hours. "This is illegal," Elizabeth whispered, terrified but desperate. "So is letting a child lose his leg when it can be saved," Marcus replied in perfect English, tinged with French. "The choice is yours, madam." Elizabeth made a choice, the kind of choice that haunts you forever, the kind that saves everything. For 4 hours, Marcus reset every bone, aligned every fragment, used techniques the American doctors didn't know existed. When the morning doctors arrived, they called it a miracle. Marcus called it Tuesday. The bones healed perfectly. Harrison walked again within months. And Elizabeth Blake, grateful and terrified, made Marcus and Martha promise to never tell anyone what really happened. "We won't," Martha said, "but if you ever see my son, if he ever needs help." "I'll remember," Elizabeth promised. "I swear on my life I'll remember." She did remember. For 23 years she remembered, right up until the cancer diagnosis, right up until the moment she wrote a letter that Martha would carry for 30 years, a letter that Dr. Harrison Blake never received, a letter that would explain everything. Present day St. Mary's Hospital, 6:53 a.m. Dr. Blake picked up the X-ray with shaking hands. "Your husband was a doctor." Martha smiled. the sad kind of smile that carries decades. Dr. Marcus Washington, brilliant surgeon in Haiti. Here, she gestured at her janitor's uniform. Just a man who cleaned toilets so his son could eat. She pulled out another paper from her pocket, yellowed with age, creased from being unfolded and refolded 1,000 times. A medical school application, dated 2020, 3 years ago. The name at the top made Dr. Blake's stomach drop. Harrison Washington, our son, named after you after the boy my husband saved. Dr. Blake remembered that application. He'd been on the admissions committee. He'd held it in his hands. He'd made a decision that day. A decision he was about to learn had destroyed more than one life. Perfect MCAT scores, Martha continued, her voice steady but breaking at the edges. Perfect GPA, 3 years of volunteer work, recommendations from doctors who actually saw his talent. I don't remember. Liar. The word hung in the air like smoke. You remember, Dr. Blake. Room 402, admissions meeting, March 15, 2020. You said, her voice cracked. You said students from that neighborhood rarely succeed. Why waste a spot? Dr. Blake's face went white, because he did remember. God help him, he did remember. 3 years I've cleaned your office, Martha said. 3 years I've emptied your trash. 3 years I've listened to you laugh with colleagues about maintaining standards. She pulled out a recording device, old, the kind people don't think about anymore. That little boy whose leg my husband saved, whose life my blood gave back, who walked because we risked everything. Martha's voice broke completely. Grew up to destroy my son's dream because of his address. Dr. Blake reached for the recording device. Martha pulled it back. Where is he now? Dr. Blake whispered. Your son, where? Martha's eyes filled with tears, and when she answered, Dr. Blake understood that some wounds don't heal with time. Some wounds fester. Some wounds wait 30 years for the right moment to finally bleed out. He's dead, Dr. Blake. Harrison Washington died 2 years ago. Suicide. Left a note saying he couldn't become who he was meant to be, so he'd rather not be at all. Dr. Blake collapsed into a chair. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. Martha handed him a folder, thick, full of papers. After Harrison died, I found his journals. Every patient he'd helped as a paramedic. Every person whose life he'd touched. 127 people he saved before you told him he wasn't good enough. Dr. Blake opened the folder. The first page made his hands start shaking again. It was a photograph. Harrison Washington in his paramedic uniform, arm around an elderly man. Dr. Blake knew that man, knew him well. That's Senator Morrison, Martha said quietly. Harrison saved his life in 2019. Heart attack during a campaign event. That senator wrote one of Harrison's recommendation letters. You rejected him anyway. Page after page, face after face. And then Dr. Blake saw a photo that stopped his heart. A young black man in a paramedic uniform holding a newborn baby, a blue blanket, tiny fingers. The date, March 3, 2018. Dr. Blake knew that date, that was. Your daughter, Martha said. Harrison delivered her when your wife went into labor in that restaurant. You never saw him. You were on the phone with the hospital panicking. But Harrison, my son, saved your grandchild's life. The world tilted. Dr. Blake tried to speak. Nothing came out. I wanted to tell you so many times, Martha continued. Wanted to throw it in your face, but I kept cleaning, kept watching, kept waiting. Why? Dr. Blake finally managed. Why wait? Why not expose me immediately? Martha's expression changed, hardened. Because I wanted you to stand on top of your mountain first. I wanted you to get everything you ever wanted. That promotion. That chief of surgery position you're getting today. She leaned in close. I wanted you to have it all, so when I took it away, you'd know exactly what you cost my son. She pulled out her phone, showed him the screen, an email draft. Recipients, Hospital Board, Medical Licensing Board, Local Media. Subject line, The Truth About Dr. Harrison Blake. Her finger hovered over send. But then something happened, Martha whispered. What? The shadows started, the ones I asked you about, and I realized God has a better plan than revenge. Come with me, Martha said. Dr. Blake followed her through corridors he'd never noticed, down stairs that didn't appear on any hospital map, to a basement room marked Storage Authorized Personnel Only. Martha had been authorized for 47 years. She unlocked the door. What Dr. Blake saw inside would change everything he thought he knew about healing. The room was small, maybe 200 square feet, but every inch of wall space was covered with papers. Medical textbooks, patient charts, handwritten notes in perfect medical terminology. And in the center, a desk with a logbook, 47 years of entries. What is this? Dr. Blake whispered. My husband's legacy. Martha opened the logbook. After Marcus died in 2000, I kept learning, kept studying, kept watching patients that the doctors missed. She ran her finger down entries. Room 302, Mrs. Chen thyroid storm, misdiagnosed as panic attack. I slipped a note under Dr. Patterson's door. She lived. Room 418, Mr. Johnson pulmonary embolism, diagnosed as anxiety. I called his daughter, told her to demand a D-dimer test. He lived. Room 215, baby Garcia sepsis, dismissed as colic. I cornered the pediatrician in the parking lot. She lived. The entries went on for pages, hundreds of them. How many? Dr. Blake asked, his voice barely a whisper. 247 patients, over 23 years. Dr. Blake pulled out his phone, started making calls. Martha watched. Room 302, Mrs. Chen, he said to the medical records department. Pull her file from 2018. He made 6 more calls, 6 more verifications. Martha had been right about every single one. You've been saving lives in secret for 23 years. Since the day my Marcus died, he made me promise, if I couldn't be a doctor by title, I'd be one by action. Then Martha swayed, caught herself on the desk. The shadows I mentioned, she said quietly, started 6 months ago, right side vision first, then headaches, then the dreams that aren't dreams. Dr. Blake knew those symptoms. We need to scan you now. The MRI took 45 minutes. Dr. Blake stood outside the scanner, watching Martha's still form through the glass. He performed this scan on 300 patients. He'd never prayed during a single one. He prayed now. When the images loaded, he understood why Martha had been waiting, why she timed everything perfectly. Glioblastoma multiforme, stage Roman 4, inoperable. The tumor sat in her right temporal lobe like a fist, tendrils reaching into areas no surgeon could touch. 3 months, maybe 4. There's treatment in Switzerland, Dr. Blake said when Martha emerged. Experimental, it's showing. 92% reduction in tumor growth in phase Roman 2 trials, Martha finished. I know. I've been following the research. Dr. Hoffman's team in Zurich, combination of targeted radiation and immunotherapy. Then you know it could give you years instead of months. I also know it costs $2 million, Martha smiled sadly. I make $15.60 an hour. Do the math, doctor. Dr. Blake's mind raced. The board meeting was in 30 minutes, his promotion, his moment, everything he'd worked for. I'll talk to the board, hospital funding. Martha laughed, the bitter kind. The same board that cut janitorial health benefits last year, the same board that fought against union wages, that board. I'll make them listen. Will you? Martha asked. Will you risk your promotion, your reputation, your chief of surgery position, for a janitor who just told you she knows every terrible thing you've done. Dr. Blake looked at the X-ray still clutched in his hand. The 7-year-old boy's leg, the leg that should have been amputated, the leg that walked because 2 people risked everything, and he made a choice that would cost him everything he'd spent 30 years building. Yes. Just stop for a second. If you're still here, if you just felt that same weight I felt when Dr. Blake said yes, then you understand why this story had to be told. Here's what amazes me. Right now, someone in Tokyo is having the same reaction as someone in London. Someone in Mexico City just felt their heart drop at the same moment as someone in Mumbai. This revelation about a secret 47 years old is hitting people on every continent at the same time. That's what Story Buddy is about, these moments that unite us. So before we continue, before I tell you what happened in that board meeting, do 2 things. First, hit that subscribe button and notification bell if you haven't already. Second, drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from. Is it morning where you are? Night? Are you on a bus at home trying to sleep? Let's see how big this family really is, because what happens next when Martha walks into that board meeting? You need to be prepared. Conference Room B, 3rd floor, 11:30 a.m. 12 board members sat around a mahogany table that cost more than Martha made in 2 years. Dr. Blake stood at the head of the table holding his promotion letter. In 30 seconds, he'd tear it in half. Before we proceed with my appointment, he began, I need to bring something to your attention. Chairman Richards smiled. Surely nothing that can't wait until after. Martha Washington has been saving lives in this hospital for 23 years. She needs treatment for glioblastoma, $2 million for experimental therapy in Switzerland. The smile died. Dr. Blake, Richards said carefully, we appreciate Mrs. Washington's service, but we can't set precedents for. For what? For people who have given 47 years to this hospital, for people who notice what we miss, for people who save patients while we're busy taking credit. Dr. Blake opened his laptop, projected Martha's logbook onto the screen. 247 patients, he said. 247 lives saved because an 89-year-old janitor knows more medicine than some of our attendings. Board member Morrison shifted uncomfortably. That's impossible. She's not qualified. Your grandson, Ethan, December 2022, room 507. Morrison went pale. He was post-op from appendectomy, started showing signs of sepsis. The resident dismissed it as normal post-surgical pain. Martha noticed. She called you directly, told you to get him back to the hospital immediately. You did. He lived. Dr. Blake scrolled through the entries, found another. Board member Chen's mother, November 2018, thyroid storm. Your mother would have died if Martha hadn't. Absolutely not, Chairman Richards interrupted. We cannot, will not, set a precedent where we pay for every employee's medical care. It's fiscally irresponsible. Then I'll go public. The room went silent. I'll go to every media outlet in the country. I'll tell them about the janitor who saved 247 lives while earning minimum wage. I'll tell them about her son, the brilliant young man this hospital's affiliated medical school rejected based on his zip code. I'll tell them how he saved lives as a paramedic instead. I'll tell them. The conference room door opened. Every head turned. Martha Washington stood in the doorway, but she wasn't wearing her faded blue uniform. She was wearing her husband's white coat, the one he'd brought from Haiti 43 years ago, the one with his name still embroidered on the pocket, Dr. Marcus Washington, M.D. And in her arms, she carried a box that would contain evidence of something the board had buried 20 years ago, something that would destroy the hospital's reputation, something that would prove Martha had always been more than they ever wanted to admit. Martha walked to the center of the room with steady steps. The tremor in her hands was gone, not because the tumor had miraculously disappeared, but because this was the moment she'd been preparing for. 43 years ago, Martha said, her voice clear and strong, my husband wore this coat in a hospital in Port-au-Prince. He saved lives. He taught students. He was respected. She set the box on the conference table. Then we came to America. We thought it would be better here. We thought his talent would be recognized. We thought. She opened the box. Inside, patient files. Dozens of them, with 2 sets of notes on each one, official hospital notes and handwritten corrections in the margins. 20 years ago, this hospital had a crisis. Remember 2003, the outbreak of hospital-acquired infections. 12 patients died in 3 months. Chairman Richard's face went from red to white. The CDC came in, found violations. Marcus found them first, wrote a 20-page report detailing every infection control failure, submitted it to administration under his own name. Martha pulled out a document, old, official hospital letterhead. You buried it. You took his recommendations, every single one, implemented them, and never gave him credit. Why? Because admitting a janitor solved what your doctors couldn't. She pulled out another document, an internal memo. Dr. Blake read it over her shoulder. His hands started shaking again. The memo was from Richards himself. We cannot acknowledge Mr. Washington's contributions. It would expose our initial failures. Implement his suggestions quietly. If anyone asks, credit Dr. Morrison with the infection control improvements. Board member Morrison stood up abruptly. This is out of context. Is it? Martha asked calmly. Because I have the full email chain. I have the CDC report showing your failures. I have Marcus's original recommendations dated 6 weeks before you suddenly became an infection control expert. And I have copies already with 3 journalists and a lawyer. The room erupted, arguments, denials, panic. Martha stood in the center, calm as a storm's eye. Dr. Blake watched her, and he understood. This wasn't about money. This wasn't even about treatment. This was about something much more important. Martha, he said quietly, cutting through the chaos, what do you want? She looked at him, really looked at him, the way she'd looked at that 7-year-old boy 47 years ago. I want my son's name on this hospital's wall of honor. I want a scholarship established in his name. I want every Harrison Washington who comes after him to know that talent matters more than addresses. And I want to wear this coat, officially, for one day before I die. The room fell silent. You want to practice medicine? Richards asked, disbelieving. No, Martha said softly. I want to be acknowledged, just once, after 47 years of being invisible. I want to walk these halls wearing my husband's coat and have someone, anyone, call me what I've earned the right to be called. Her voice broke. Dr. Washington. Dr. Blake moved before he could think, stood beside Martha. Done, he said. You don't have authority, Richard started. Then fire me. But I'm giving up my chief of surgery position to create a new role. I'm recommending to the board that Martha Washington be appointed honorary medical consultant for her remaining time. She'll wear that coat. She'll be addressed as doctor. And she'll train the next generation to see what we've been missing. And if you refuse, I'll walk out this door with Martha's evidence, and every national media outlet will know by sunset that St. Mary's Hospital buried a report that could have saved 12 lives, because acknowledging a black janitor's expertise was too embarrassing. The board had 30 seconds to decide. What they chose would either redeem 47 years of invisibility or destroy the hospital's reputation forever. 3 months later, Dr. Martha Washington, honorary medical consultant, walked the halls of St. Mary's Hospital in her husband's white coat. The tumor was growing, the shadows were spreading, but for 3 months she'd been visible. She taught rounds every morning, showed residents how to really see patients, how to notice what the machines missed. Numbers tell you what's happening, she'd say. People tell you why. Dr. Harrison Blake had resigned as chief of surgery, took a position as associate, used his salary to establish the Harrison Washington Scholarship Fund. The first recipient was a young woman from Martha's old neighborhood, perfect scores, accepted to medical school, future neurosurgeon. Her name was Aaliyah. She visited Martha every week. On Martha's last day, the day the shadows won, Aaliyah sat beside her bed. "Why me?" Aaliyah asked. "Why did you choose my scholarship application?" Martha smiled, weak but genuine. "Because your essay said you wanted to be a doctor to save people everyone else ignores, just like my Marcus, just like my Harrison. Just like you should have been 47 years ago." Martha's hand found the old X-ray on her bedside table, the 7-year-old boy's leg. "I saved that boy's life," she whispered, "and he grew up to save mine, just 40 years too late for Marcus and Harrison to see it." Dr. Blake entered the room. He'd been there every day for 3 months. "Martha, his voice broke. "I'm sorry for your son for everything I should have." "You did," Martha interrupted. "In the end, you did." She pulled out an envelope, her final letter. "This is from your mother, Elizabeth. She gave it to me in 1976, made me promise to give it to you when the time was right." Dr. Blake opened it with shaking hands. Inside, in his mother's handwriting: "Harrison, if you're reading this, it means Martha found you. It means you've learned what she and Marcus did for you. I made them promise to never tell. I was ashamed that our family needed help, ashamed that a black couple in janitorial uniforms knew more than white doctors. But they saved you anyway, and I've spent 30 years praying you'd become the kind of man who would have helped them back. I hope you did. I hope I raised you better than my shame. If I didn't, if you turned out like your father, proud and blind, then maybe this letter will wake you up. Pay it forward, Harrison. Save someone everyone else overlooks. Be worthy of the gift they gave you. Love, Mom." Dr. Blake folded the letter, put it in his coat pocket, right next to his heart. Martha took her last breath 3 days later. But before she died, she did one final thing, one last act of invisible healing. She left a note in room 507 for a patient no one was paying attention to, a patient whose symptoms didn't make sense, a patient the doctors had dismissed. The resident found the note, ordered the tests Martha suggested, saved the patient's life. It was her 248th save. 1 year later, the Dr. Martha Washington Wall of Excellence was unveiled at St. Mary's Hospital. Not a plaque, an entire wall with 248 names, every life she'd saved. Dr. Harrison Blake stood beside it, wearing his white coat. Dr. Aaliyah Mitchell stood beside him, wearing hers. And in the center, a photo. Martha Washington in her husband's white coat, smiling, finally visible. Underneath, a quote from her last interview. "I was never invisible, you just weren't looking." The Harrison Washington Scholarship has sent 47 students to medical school so far, all from zip codes that usually don't make it onto admissions committee's shortlists. Dr. Blake never became chief of surgery. He says it's the best decision he ever made. And every morning before rounds, the residents gather at Martha's wall. They call it the moment of seeing. They stand there and promise, to themselves, to each other, to Martha, that they'll never stop looking, never stop seeing, never stop noticing the people everyone else overlooks. Because medicine isn't just about what you know. It's about who you see. Before you go, before you click away and return to your day, I want you to realize something incredible that just happened. For the last hour, someone in Sydney and someone in Seattle were experiencing Martha's story at the same exact moment. Someone in Cairo and someone in Calgary just went through the same emotional journey. Right now, in this moment, StoryBuddy has connected thousands of people across every time zone through Martha's 47 years of invisible service. That's powerful. That's why these stories matter. So here's what I'm asking. If Martha's story moved you, if it made you think differently about the invisible people in your own life, take 10 seconds. Hit the subscribe button and that notification bell so you never miss another story like this. And then drop a comment. Tell me where you watched this from. Tell me what time it is there. Tell me about someone in your life who deserves to be seen. Because next week, I'm sharing something extraordinary. A gas station attendant who noticed a pattern in lottery tickets that exposed a conspiracy spanning 3 states and 20 years. You don't want to miss it. The StoryBuddy family now spans 5 countries. Let's see how much bigger we can make it. Let's prove that real stories about real people still matter. And remember, someone is invisible in your life right now. Someone whose name you don't know. Someone whose story could change you. All you have to do is look. See you in the next one.